And we can also look at the theology of the ladder versus the theology of the cross in some other terms. Because God's special revelation came to us in two parts, two great doctrines of the Bible. And we call it law and gospel. When we talk about law, and that goes all the way back to the garden, remember, God gave a command, He gave a law, and Adam and Eve were required to keep that law, to do something. So we can always think of law this way. Law is what God requires us to do. Now, this is God's requirements of us. And the law is always there to show us the boundaries, to show us that we can't cross over these. We cross over these boundaries, these laws, these commands, then we've broken them, we've sinned. The law is good. The law is there for our good. But it really boils down to this. The law is what we do. And so the theology of the ladder is really a law-based theology. It's saying if we're going to be reconciled to God, it's on the basis of the law. It's on the basis of keeping His command. It's on the basis of what we do. In contrast to that is God's word of gospel. The word gospel means good news, and it is good news because the gospel is not what God requires of us, but it's what God Himself does. What He's already done, what He continues to do for us. And so in contrast to the theology of the ladder, we have the theology of the cross. And the theology of the cross tells us this, that God, knowing that we could not be reconciled to Him, reconciled Himself to us. He did it. We couldn't, so He did. And we'll look more at this of law and gospel in our next section of Grace Alone. But remember this very important distinction between law and gospel. The law is what we do. The gospel is what God does. The gospel makes no demands on us. The gospel requires nothing of us. The gospel is what God does. And so the law and the gospel, both are God's word, but they stand in stark contrast to one another. And whether we're trying to be reconciled to God through the law or through the gospel makes all the difference in the world. If we're trying to be reconciled to God through the law, it's up to us. We're in the theology of the ladder. But if we're looking to be reconciled to God based on what He's done, it's a theology of the cross, and it's based in the gospel. It's based in good news.